Oh, hi, thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
I threw that under the desk. Oh well. Hi, it's your friendly neighborhood reader, writer, arithmetic, author, Jonathan. I have recorded this voiceover like 6 times. I'm gonna try now Sunday morning after Thanksgiving because this was supposed to go up on Thursday or Wednesday. And I have depression.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not.
So it didn't. But what we're doing today is going over the creation of Thomas Lila, the entrance hall of Wells Manor, and the sitting room. Originally, I tried to walk through this and like go through every step of my process with you. That took too long and it was boring. So let's get into it, and we'll just figure out what we're gonna do as we go along. Okay? Cool. Alexa, it's podcast time.
Gee, it sure is boring around here.
Okay, so basically what we're doing here is we're going to go in, edit Warren's family, and once we edit his family and we're able to create like the complete thing here, we're going to add Thomas and Lila to it just as household members, not as like anything else, because we can do that in The Sims. There's going to be some parts that are cut out, like there's a couple of parts that have already been cut out where I'm just messing with the audio and vertical sync and stuff. So if you see weird cuts or jumps, you're not really missing anything. I did it as well in the house customization or building as well, because I mean I spent like 30-45 minutes just tweaking a room to get it to be completely even. With Lila, we're giving her the romantic, the evil, and the family-oriented trait. Family-oriented right now, we would assume it's because she loves her son, Thomas.
I love you, Katie Katz.
Who we're going to create a little bit later on. That may not be the case. We're giving her the evil one just because she's got this weird... She's very... I don't want to say problematic, but she's very interesting in the way that she acts. It's very sensual and kind of friendly, too friendly almost. So we're gonna give her this trait right here.
Don't ever tell me I'm ugly, cause bitch, is you blind?
Serial romantic. I think that's her whole thing. Is she's a romantic. She seems like she's always looking for the right one. At least in the way that I've created her. I gave her a random last name. It's not really... I just made it up. She has red hair. We know that. It's you know how people with red hair, a lot of times it's kind of their thing, is they have red hair. Well, her hair is not like your natural red hair, because when you think of like true natural red hair, generally it's more of a ginger, an orangier kind of red, not necessarily your traditional red. We're going red with hers. It's not natural. She's not making any, she's not pretending that it's natural. But when you think of like romance novels, or you think of descriptions of women with red hair, it's always a scarlet-haired maiden. It's bright red. But really, that's not the color most people with red hair have. And again, she's probably not going to address it in the story. I don't think she will, but she's going to have bright red hair. And she's also, the way that I designed her is kind of how I, in my mind, and I did some CC shopping to try and find some more appropriate hairstyles and stuff like that. The way that I've created her is not necessarily in a moment, like here's like a mid-2000s look, or here is a 1990s hairstyle or whatever. She is supposed to kind of give us like a timeless vibe, if that makes sense, because she just appeared in this house. Like she was here in this house, and I settled on this middle part one, and I'm just kind of futzing around with the colors and stuff. But I settled on a middle part hairstyle that's not super specific in any way, because she was here with the house when Warren arrived. She was there with his grandfather. We don't know how long she had been there, and her age is kind of hard to place, right? in the story, it's not specific yet, and it won't ever be super specific, but she's not like 20. Her son is a grown-up. She's a grown-up, obviously. So we don't know her exact age. But what we do know is she's old enough to have an adult son, but she's also got this bright red hair. She's running around wearing these like silk negligees. She's looking very sensual, which is great, and more power to her. But it's very odd. Her whole thing, the way that I've written her, she's supposed to be odd. Like, you're supposed to look at her and be like,
You need to sit your little
"What's
sexy
your
ass
deal?"
down.
And like, your assumption, which you may or may not be wrong, is that she's just there to seduce the owner of a wealthy home whose only job is to take care of this house. That's already her job. So that would make the most sense, right? Oh, sorry, I drank a Dunkin' Donuts coffee and it's not agreeing with me. It would make sense that your first instinct is that she just wants to seduce this wealthy person that walks into her house. You may or may not be correct. I'm playing around with the makeup right now for a second just because again, it's the whole idea of making her timeless. That was my whole point, and The Sims makeup leaves a lot to be desired, unfortunately. But it's basically what I did was tried to create the Eurocentric ideal of beauty. Not something I particularly subscribe to, but it's to create this character that just embodies your typical idea of like a sensual romance character, what she would look like, a sensual red-haired, scarlet-haired maiden, somebody who's so sensual that nobody can resist her. You know what I mean? That's how I've created her, and that, I can tell you, as the person who created her, is how she sees herself. And she will change her appearance, she'll change what she's wearing, maybe more than that, depending on what she thinks the person that is her current like center of attention likes. Sorry if I'm doing this a lot, like covering my chin. I cut my beard in a certain way, and it really looks like a double chin if I turn, like, look. Looks, but from the side, it's just, I mean, there's a little bit there. Okay, I'm a little swollen, but, so we're just gonna do this. Red is not only her hair color, but again, I kind of think like grown-up Cheryl Blossom from Riverdale, if you watch Riverdale. I watch it religiously. I love it. I love the idea of subverting like your typical ideal. Oh, there's a plane going overhead. Well, you might hear that. I don't know. I love the idea of subverting something typical or something that we've come to expect as heteronormative or just your norm or like your ideal, and subverting into something a little bit more queer or different or a little more of the time. So think like adult Cheryl Blossom, how she's always wearing red, even though in theory, like color theory, if she wanted to pick the color that was the most complementary to her hairstyle or her hair color, it would probably be green. But red is her thing. Red is Cheryl Blossom's thing. Red is Lila's thing. She just, it's not explained yet. We might figure out in the future, or we might not. As I've said before, her looks, the way that she looks, the way that she acts, everything about her is subject to change. And that sounds odd, but it makes sense within the story, and it'll make sense pretty soon once we get a few more chapters in. But we're customizing her. Like I said, every single thing that she wears, everything that she does is kind of centered around, one, looking beautiful, and two, appealing to whoever she kind of has set her focus on. So she's got her red, all this red, and I went shopping for different red things for her to wear, and you can do everything you want. You can look everywhere, and there's only so many nondescript red items you can find. And again, this is The Sims. This is not like the definitive end-all be-all of what Lila looks like in general. It's just kind of a supplement to the story. It's kind of a way to picture, if you're not good at picturing what someone looks like in your head in a story, it's a good way to get a basis. So you can say, okay, she wears red all the time. Cool. She's got full lips. She's, again, the Eurocentric ideal of beauty. Although I don't know that the Eurocentric ideal of beauty has red hair. I would assume that it would be blonde with blue eyes, but I don't know. I don't really subscribe to that notion. But here, like I said, I'm trying to tie red into everything, and sometimes it just does not work because number one, I have a full-time job in real life. I can't really spend 15 hours CC shopping for characters, especially when my videos get like 3 views, and that's fine. I'm still going to put in the 8 to 10 hours it takes to create them. But here you can see she's wearing red. It might be different styles of red. It might be maroon. It might be red and black. It might be red and white. We just don't know. In this one, I think, did I settle on the red dress? I think I did. It's just red everywhere. So that's like her whole thing. And you can tell by her makeup, yes, she's dressing to impress. Yes, she's dressing to attract attention. But she's not wearing like wild clothes. She's wearing a dark lip, which at first I was like, that seems very now. It doesn't seem like something people used to do. But then I thought about it, and in like the early 2000s, everyone wore pale lipstick. You remember it was like, well, you might not remember. I remember when it was like basically white lips with lip gloss. It's like styles are subject to change. I figure dark lipstick is not something that is just from one time. And it's not like dark lipstick with a black lip liner. It's not something like that. So I think I can get away with it. But that's kind of Lila's thing. Lila's thing is red, and Lila's thing is also like, hey, let me stunt and let me get as much attention as I can. And what her reasoning is, we don't know yet. And she's kind of the antithesis to Thomas, or maybe Thomas is more the antithesis to her, because she's all about her looks. She's all about attracting attention. She's all about getting whatever she wants. And it kind of, when you start putting the pieces together, number one, the mystery that I've set up here is not super hard to figure out, I don't think. Because that's not really the point of a scary movie, I think, or a scary story, because I base everything off of scary movies because they're my favorite things. I don't think that's necessarily the basis of a scary movie or a scary story, is to like confuse your audience or like not lead them along. You know what I mean? Like a ghost story, you know that they're ghosts from jump. You're kind of waiting for the character to catch up to what you already know a lot of times. So I'm not going to come out and say it in case you haven't figured it out. That's fine. But her, like, I don't know. I'm not making it super difficult. I don't think, to figure out what her deal is, but Thomas is the antithesis to her, even though she is his mother. But there's a reason why, right? Think about the clues we've set up from just chapter 1, 2, and 3. Everyone that comes to this house is male, right? Everyone that comes to this house is generally older. And you can assume that when someone is an older person, they either don't have a spouse. And in most cases, what you kind of infer through this story, and you just kind of guess, is that they were single or widowed, just like his grandfather was. And so they have to go to this house. Now, what is interesting is Warren is different, right? And again, I'm not going to spell it out. You can listen to chapter 1, 2, and 3. But what he was told by his grandfather makes a lot of sense, is that what makes you different is what makes you powerful. And what makes him different than what we can assume all of his predecessors are. You know what it is. I know what it is. And that's what makes him powerful. That, in the end, is what's going to fix the story, what's going to be our resolution. So I think that's interesting. Now, we're working on Thomas here. Again, he is Lila's child in this story. The reason I say it like that is because he is, but he isn't. So in theory, I could make him look like anything. I didn't. I made him look kind of like her, mostly in that I just made him pale and kind of tried to make their features a little bit similar, just so that it makes sense story-wise, not only for us, but also for Thomas as a character, right? Because he has to believe it. He's the character that actually has to believe it, not us. We know that something else is going on, but Thomas doesn't. He's just showing up to this house thinking he's got, $500,000 a year to spend in a house that's already paid.
I'm really rich.
That is not really the case. And like I said, while Lila spends all her time making sure that she is the most beautiful version of herself she can be, in theory, Thomas doesn't do that. And again, we're kind of going with like Eurocentric standards of beauty with him, especially because I think he ends up with blonde hair and blue eyes. A shout out to myself, blonde hair, blue eyes. Yuck. Ugh, yuck. I'm just looking at myself in the camera. Ew. But not only does he not spend a lot of time on himself, but he's fairly nondescript. Like, that's kind of his whole deal. That has been his deal historically, and we'll find out more as he kind of more about his character is revealed, but he's kind of spent his existence with Lila in her shadow, being the boring,
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
boring half of this duo. And Warren does start to just call them the duo because that's what they are. He never sees them apart, really. He never really sees them off the property, which is just kind of an interesting twist on the story. But he's never needed to be particularly interesting. He just has always existed as a foil to Lila. He's always existed as a foil to whoever is there, and just as a means to funneling more attention towards Lila. Sorry if you see music flickering in and out of the screen. This was an hour and 40 minutes of The Sims, and I needed a little music to cheer myself up. So I had a little share going, a little of this, a little of that, a little drag music in there.
Perfect, you're beautiful, you look like Linda Evangelista, you're a model. Everything about you is perfect. Did you stone those tights? Oh, you're smiling. They eat her up every single time she's on that damn stage. She doesn't even, she could walk out there in a diaper. And they're like, Valentina, your smile is beautiful.
Or what have you. But that's what we're dealing with Thomas. You can see every outfit I put him in is nondescript. It's boring. It's not interesting. His expression is boring. His face is, I guess it's fine, but it's really, it's just nondescript. Everything about him is nondescript, whereas Lila is the opposite. Every single thing that she has or does or wears or looks like is descript. It is intentional, whereas he's kind of designed and created by I created him. I created him in this first set of chapters to be forgettable, to be what nobody really cares about. Just kind of there. He's there because Lila can't do it all, is our assumption. And I think it's kind of fun and interesting once the story is finished and we see everything that's going on, kind of the scope of what's happening. I think it's fun and interesting. Can you see that I'm just like slouched? Ew. Look at my teeth. Oh. Anyway, so we're just throwing him in just the most generic clothing. Like, I think he ends up in basketball shorts as swimwear, which is just kind of what straight people who don't care about themselves do, I feel like. Or if you were me, you're like a self-conscious child. But he's just dressed like a farmer. That's his whole thing. Now we're going to get into building the house, building the rooms that we've encountered so far. Not the bedroom, though. And this, we're going to see a jump cut here in a second, and it's because everything was off-centered, and I spent a bunch of time trying to, like, center this house up, because the whole point of this farmhouse is, like, it's just a display of wealth. It's not a display of style or opulence or design, or, well, it's opulent, but it's not really a display of taste or design. That's the whole point of the Wells Manor, is showing, see, we just jumped. It's not really showing how much taste people have. It's how much money people have to put things on display. And he's got this, he walks in and he sees this massive multiple story entrance, which I find interesting. I would have loved to do like a double-sided rounded staircase that comes around, but The Sims does not offer that. There's a lot of things they don't offer, but now we have platforms that I don't know how to use, so that's fun. Actually, I think I might have used a platform as the... It's not important. Another jump, it's just me throwing lights up. It's not really that interesting. When I tried to do this the first time, it was like 15 minutes of me just talking about how rich people have no taste, no class, no money, or no, lots of money, and they don't know how to spend it. And that's what this whole... That's what this whole house kind of shows, right? Because it's still the dated kind of maintained but not updated version of rich and opulent. And Warren is obviously not a fan of that. In my head, he's got kind of more like my style, a little bit more minimalist, modern, clean, simple. I think what a lot of people in their mid to early 20s up into their 30s, maybe even later, right now are kind of really into. And this is, again, the antithesis of that. This whole house, Lila, this story that he's walked into is the antithesis of what he thought he was, right? Like, he jumped at the chance at being rich, and that's cool. We get it. Everybody gets it. I would do the same thing. He jumps at that, but then he jumps into like a house that is so outside the realm of what he's used to. Like, he has no way to even begin to deal with it. He's dealing with Lila, who is, again, kind of the antithesis to him, because as far as we know so far, and we're 3 chapters in, yeah, by the time you're watching this, we're 3 chapters in. We just don't know much about him, and we're not going to learn all that much about him, because it's just not... See, I don't even know if I don't think I ever get the staircase right. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We don't get huge, wild descriptions of him. He seems fairly nondescript. He seems like someone who doesn't... Like, he cares, but he doesn't. In that he knows that he should care about some things, and he does, but he also doesn't, if that makes sense. Like, he doesn't want to care about these types of things. He does only because he recognizes them as a means to not having to work the rest of his life for 50 to 60 hours every week until he dies, which is a relatable teen post. But as you can see, I'm slapping paintings on the wall willy-nilly. None of the frames match. None of the styles of the portraits match. None of the sizes match. They don't... There's no symmetry. And to me, that's, again, a testament just to... Like, they're all expensive things, and they all look good individually. But when you put each one of them in a room together all at once, and then you put another set of pictures or portraits or whatever in another room, and they're all just kind of mashed on the wall, it was, here's another expensive thing that we don't have a space for. I think that's really common. Like, you watch The Haunting of Hill House, you watch Bly Manor, you watch any scary movie set in an old house. Those are just the two, of course, those are the two that come to my mind. I'm just thinking, did I steal? No, I didn't. Okay, we're good. I just realized that both of them were like manors and houses, but I guess that everybody lives in a house usually. So that's not really that original. But when you think of these, a lot of them are so opulently decorated, but opulently decorated doesn't always mean good. Like, it doesn't mean stylish, doesn't mean thought out or planned. It just means we keep bringing expensive things into the home, and then we don't do anything with them, if that makes sense. We just throw everything on the wall, and we don't even see what sticks. We make it stick. As whether it's cheap, expensive, it doesn't matter. This Dunkin' Donuts coffee is killing me. Oh my god. Why did I... Because it's like 8 a.m. I had to be up early. Huh?
Think about Dua Lipa.
Dua Lipa.
I hope you couldn't hear that. If you could, my bad. Again, rows of windows. To me, rows of windows, not really attractive. Especially shuttered windows. I think they're cool, but I think they're very dated. I don't love them, but it's the style of the house. I know that there's really only so much you can do when it comes to, oh, I have this 300-year-old historic farmhouse. You can't really turn it into like the picture of modernity. You can't put a bunch of frameless windows or like plate glass windows that are tinted in it and it still makes sense. I get that. But there's ways to update it. Like you'll see at the end, we put a bunch of fountains and stone benches out front that don't make sense in the modern day, because now the style is Adirondack chairs, it's wooden swinging chairs, it's even in farmhouse, like modern farmhouses, it's pretty modern furniture. And you can take an old farmhouse and make it more modern. That's not the issue. That's never, with the Wells Manor, that's never been the issue. I need to really pick. Are we going to do Wells House, Wells Manor? Let's just call it Wells Manor. It doesn't really matter. It really does not matter. A house and a manor can be the same thing. All manors are houses. Not all houses are manors. So, again, it's just rows of windows. I'm literally moving walls so that there's rows of windows. It's just, the design of the house is not to be good, because when it was built, the style of houses, they could only build what styles they knew of. I mean, I guess they could have invented a new style, but when this was built, that wasn't a thing even for the rich and famous. Did they have famous people then? I guess. That wasn't the style even for the rich. It was kind of, let's take styles everyone can adapt to and just blow them up. So you had, everything was a farmhouse, but some farmhouses were tiny little ramshackle things, and some were these giant, like, ultra massive displays of wealth. So this is just a giant version of what everyone could afford, so that that the person that lives in it is rich. And again, we're slapping more pictures. Another club, bus, plane. What was it Lady Gaga said? We're doing that, but with portraits and giant velvet wood carved seating. Like, it makes no sense. And I will say, again, number one, I'm not a builder. It's not my thing. I play The Sims to watch my Sims. That's why I play. I play for the wicked whims. I have no qualms about it. That is why I play. I have a sad life. I live a sad life. But that's not important. What is important is, this room is not decorated to be tasteful, to be cohesive, because like we said, that was not the goal when the house was designed, when it was built, when the original Wells Manor, and this technically isn't the original Wells Manor. It has electricity, for one. Number two, it's got like a paved driveway, right? It's not like, there have been updates to it, and I think it's interesting once you learn more about the house to kind of think, how did it get those updates? Who made the concession, right? But it's not designed to use the space well, because we design houses now not only to be comfortable and to have the space we need, but also to be very functional, because land resources are kind of more they're harder to come by in places where we want them, right? Because we're all into, like, I'm not, but most people who would build a house like this in this time period are now into urban sprawl. They're into these McMansions in a suburb that have no style, no taste, 17 different decor styles in one house. And some people just live in them because they're easier to live in. But they're at least usually pretty good uses of space. This is not that. This house was built so that there was no good use of space. Because you can see I'm just like moving the walls around, and I don't care. And the reason I don't care is because I know that this whole design, this whole house was not designed to make sense functionally. It was designed to spread out as wide as it could, take up as much space, have as much space, and then how you would use the space afterwards doesn't really matter. So, like, you're in the entrance hall, right? I keep spinning. I'm gonna get dizzy. I'm gonna throw up. Ew. Anyway, so you're in the entrance hall over here, right? You can just see it in the corner there. And then you walk through a hallway with a chair and a credenza and another chair. And then you're basically walking into another hallway. And then there's the sitting room, right, where they were. It makes no sense. And that other hall, it's just like 2 hallways leading into another hallway. It makes no sense. But again, I did design it that way. There's like a tiny room at the end where there's not going to be anything. I don't know what's in that room. I guess since I'm writing this story as I'm doing the Sims kind of walkthrough of what everything looks like, I suppose.
I'm so quirky and funny.
Yeah, I suppose that they kind of inspire each other. So we might figure out what that room is by me just futzing around with it. But again, you can see I'm just slapping pictures, slapping lights up, because it does not matter. It didn't matter when this house was built, and a lot of this furniture, a lot of this stuff has been around for a very long time. And I don't think that functional spaces necessarily became the focal point of housing until housing became like a huge premium, right? Because I'm no historian. Did I pass AP World and AP US History? Yeah, but let's be honest, what does US History teach us? Absolutely goddamn nothing. So when it comes to America, right, the idea of housing, at least the way we look at it now, right, we kind of assume that homelessness is a new problem. It's not. But when it comes to houses, and when you look specifically at houses that are really old, like old farmhouses, that's really all there is left that was old. Like, you can look at townhouses and stuff like that, but that's not what we're focused on. We're focused on more rural areas, more hidden areas. When it comes to old farmhouses, like, if you ever watched the Farmhouse Vernacular, which is another channel on YouTube, if you ever watched her channel, like, kitchens were basically these giant rooms that were kind of modular at the time. Like, at the advent of indoor plumbing, like indoor sinks and stuff, everything was kind of modular. It was, things can move around. There's these big pieces of furniture, but they can all be shoved against the wall. Space was not utilized, at least in my opinion, super effectively. And so you kind of end up with these big rooms that seem like they have no logical purpose to have that much space. And then the purpose becomes, like in the case of a kitchen, the purpose becomes known when you're cooking a huge dinner, when you're doing canning, when you're doing this or that. And that kind of applies here, but that would apply more to the servant side of the house, because this house is so massive that it's got duplicates of a lot of rooms, right? There's a kitchen for, I guess, the people who own the house, even though they don't do the cooking. And I say that confusedly only because it makes no sense to me. I know that was common. Then there's the back kitchen. There's the regular bathrooms, then there's the back bathroom. There's the regular bedrooms, and then there's the back bedrooms. That's something that, unfortunately, I think we can take other inspirations from. We're not going to take those here. We're gonna put a European-looking person in the subservient role here for once in our lives, in the world's life, really. But like, there's 2 of everything. It makes no sense even more than like the complete waste of space that a lot of these sort of houses have. Like these weird shaped rooms that really only they only make sense in the time, right? Like when you needed a bunch of space for nothing, when you needed to have a giant sitting room so you could set up a dance floor, or you needed a giant sitting room so that you could have enough space for card tables. Like, that's not really something we think about now. At least I don't, and I don't think a lot of people do. Like, we think about the living room, and again, I'm thinking in a more general sense, like your everyday person. We think about a living room. A living room is small. It does everything it needs to do. Look, we're almost done. So, like, all these spaces, they just don't make sense all the time. They don't have to make sense, because the people who were designing them were so rich, or the people who bought them were so rich that they just didn't have to care if it made sense. They just wanted to sprawl as much as possible. Now we do urban sprawl differently, in that we build these giant houses up and then these tiny little yards, and then we pack them next to each other. In this case, it was a giant, massive house that's not packed in next to anything. It's also on a bunch of land. It's like the precursor to urban sprawl. It's just sprawl. I guess is the entire point of this. So here we have David, beautiful little David. We've got Thomas here, and we've got Lila, and this is kind of where we left off at the end of chapter 2. Was them just getting to know each other before Thomas escorted Warren to his room, which we'll do that in the chapter 3 kind of breakdown. And chapter 3, I believe, is already posted. Yeah, it is. Which, shout out to the person who gave me a like and a comment on my last video. Much appreciated. Sorry, it just hit me that I said that. That's embarrassing. So this is where we're left off, is the three of them talking, a plane going overhead, which seems to be just what happens every day in my life. But that's where we are right now. We're kind of seeing just how ridiculous this house is, because remember, there are 4 floors in this house. There might also be a basement. Not super sure. Not that I designed the house in my story to be plausible in The Sims, but I think it's still plausible in The Sims. So we've designed this house, like 2 rooms in it. We've got a billion to go. I will say that when it comes to, because this was a boarding houses, of course, have a bunch of bedrooms and bathrooms, typically more bedrooms than bathrooms, but a bunch of them. I'm not going to design every single one. We are going to see some room tooling going on, which is just grabbing the most old-fashioned, gross, like ornate Victorian style bedroom and slapping it down with a bathroom attached. We're going to be doing some of that because some of the rooms don't matter. Like in this story, Warren could explore every single room. That could be a chapter each, is just exploring each room. I don't think that would be interesting. I don't think that would tell the story accurately, in a way where I wouldn't have to like move it or like make it make sense. I think it makes more sense for him to come upon it organically. So maybe we'll just start, every time I do a video, I'll slap a couple bedrooms in, because it's like a 14-bedroom house. So, oh my God. The amount of work I've signed myself up for to follow my dreams. I guess if you want to give me a like or a follow, would be much appreciated. If you're listening to the podcast and you want to get in contact with me, you can follow me on Twitter. Okay, it's at Floor Rejects on Twitter, at Floor Rejects, yeah. And you can email me your thoughts or like any questions or opinions or like comments or whatever you want privately at floorrejects@gmail.com. So until next time, I'm going to cover this camera up, except I lost the paper or the fabric that I was covering it with, because I don't want my FBI agent to see my ass. Goodbye.